Good evening and welcome to the first online meeting of the Erdington and Perry Common ward meeting. Obviously historic moments taking place online. Unfortunately, as a result of the coronavirus pandemic, we can't meet in person as we usually would, but a number of wards have met virtually online, and so we're trialling that tonight. So we've got a short agenda and hopefully some updates on issues which are relevant to local residents. Firstly, to introduce myself, I'm Councillor Gareth Moore and I represent the Erdington ward. With me tonight also I've got my ward colleagues, Councillor Robert Alden, also representing Erdington, and Councillor Bob Beecham, who represents Perry Common. If you want to say hello, guys.
Evening.
And Bob is online as well. And also we have acting as our glamorous assistants, we have John Mole and Leslie Bannister from Birmingham City Council to help us with the tech issues this evening. So, and hopefully we will run smoothly, but unfortunately the first item, first of all, I should probably touch on the agenda, as I need to give a notice that this is a virtual online meeting which is being held in public, and a recording will be available for public future broadcast. As we're joining online as well, members of the public will be able to submit their questions throughout the course of the meeting, and there will be a Q&A session on your toolbar. So if you just want to go through there, type in your question and submit it throughout the course of the meeting, and then we will try our best to get as many answers during the course of the meeting as we can. There will be a moderation of that, so please do keep it clean, but otherwise we'll get through as many questions as we can. And if we do run out of time, then we can take those questions away and we'll get answers back moving forward on that. So now the first agenda item was meant to be an update on COVID, but unfortunately we don't seem to have a member of the public health team with us, unless that's changed. So we're going to slightly move the agenda around, and we're going to start with our HS2 update. And we have with us Paul Mullins, Ian Pallett and Nitish Marshall. So not sure who of you is leading on. Paul, do you want to take over at this point, please?
Yeah, good evening, everyone. So we're just going to take you through a short presentation. My name is Paul Mullins. I'm a Senior Interface and Engagement Manager at HS2, and I'm joined by my colleagues who will introduce themselves. So I'm joined by Nitish.
Hi, I'm Nitish Marshall. I'm the Community Engagement Manager for Balfour Beatty Vinci, HS2's main works contractor. And we have Ian Pallett with us as well.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. My name's
Ian, are you able to put your camera on?
Yeah, I can do that. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't launch unless you've got your camera on.
Okay. Right, how's that? I might just have to, because I'm on a monitor, I might just have to move my my laptop. So if you just
do
that. Okay, hopefully you can see me now. Yep.
Yes, we can.
Good. Okay, Ian Pallett, the Engagement and Stakeholder Manager for HS2. Good evening, everybody.
So we have a short presentation to share with you. Leslie, are you able to share that?
Councillor Beecham, can you take the contents of your screen off, please? Because I'll be launching that if we're not careful. Can you see that? Councillor Beecham, can you turn your screen off? I've got the contents of your screen, Councillor, not mine. Sharing. Are you able to turn your screen off?
Leslie, John, is someone able to assist with this issue, please, so we can move forward with the presentation?
I've got Councillor Beecham's screen, which I don't want to launch. Hang on, now I've got it now. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. That was great.
So thank you, Leslie. We've done introduction, so if we can just move on to the next page, please.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. I'm going to take you through this particular slide for just for a few minutes, if that's okay, everybody. If you can hear me clearly, I hope so. So in terms of the numbers on the screen, the statistics that you see on your screen, we'll come back to those. I'm sure you'll see that they make very interesting reading. And having been part of this project for a while now, it's great to see this sort of this project coming to light. So just give you some background to it. In 2017, Parliament actually approved what's called Phase 1 of the HS2 route. Phase 1, for those that perhaps just need a gentle reminder, aren't too sure, that's where it runs from London into the West Midlands. And there are further phases to that, as you can see at the graphic on the right hand side of your screen, and we'll touch on that as we go through the presentation a little bit. So the backbone of the country really is to join the major cities such as London, of course, Birmingham, Manchester and Leeds to the north. The new line will also have intermediate stations along its route, so Old Oak Common rather, which is in the west of London. And then, of course, as it passes up through Birmingham, Manchester Airport, it'll stop at Crewe and also at a place called Totton in the East Midlands, and that's somewhere between the Derby and Nottingham. The HS2 integration will also be on the existing main lines of the East and the West Coast main lines. So it'll go across those particular networks as it goes across country. And then it will jump onto the existing railways, and it will then feed into the as far as the east of England, right up through the north, and it'll actually go as far as Scotland using the existing network, which is fabulous, really. So as you can see on the screen, it'll have 18 trains an hour will run from London to Manchester, which is phenomenal. Again, you can see some of the numbers on the screen there in terms of the length of the kilometres of the track, which is 553. Again, you can see we'll employ over 20,000 employees at any one time, and also you'll also see that in terms of the services and supply contractors that we use, there'll be over 2,000 of those. So it's quite a significant undertaking, of course. And equally, it's fair to say that since over the last 100 years, it's the first north of London network that's actually been rail network that's actually been commissioned. It's the largest project in Europe currently, and as you can see, it's running at a significant pace. Clearly in and around where you live, perhaps, or you see it on the news, in the media, social media, again, you'll see the project coming to life, and that's just wonderful. So since we got notice to proceed on the project, which was in April, there's been a significant mobilisation of the project, and again, as I said, it's starting to come to light now, and hopefully you'll see as things start to develop across the landscape will clearly change towards that. And then, so notice to proceed was really quite key for us. That was achieved, very difficult to achieve that, but we actually got there in the end. And obviously, as we go through the next phase, that will be incredibly successful as well. And in terms of what the project does for the country, it will obviously join the Great North and South Divide. It will bring the majority of the population of the country together. And then equally, it'll be able to significantly reduce travelling times between the north and the south of the country. So it's great to be part of the project. Again, hopefully some of the statistics that you'll see will give you the scale of what it is that we're undertaking right now. And equally, just come on that journey with us, and hopefully you'll be as excited about it as we are. And there will be some challenges that we need to overcome, but nonetheless, we're working our way through those with such events as this to keep people clearly notified and up to date in terms of progress at this moment in time. So that's enough from me for now. If I can ask to go on to the next slide, please, that'd be great. Thank you.
So Balfour Beatty Vinci are a joint venture, and we're working in partnership with HS2 as their main works contractor for this area of the railway. It's really our job to prepare the final design of the HS2 route and then build the railway in preparation for the track and signalling installation. I'm going to start off before I go into the sort of overview of our construction programme, just to let you know that this area, the Erdington and Perry Common area, aren't actually impacted as such by our work. So we aren't building anything in your area, and our traffic routes don't directly impact your area. So I'm going to move on to the next slide now, please, Leslie, and talk to you a little bit about what we're doing in Birmingham. So throughout all of our works, we endeavour to be a good neighbour. We want to treat the local community that we're working in with respect, the people that we're working with respect, and to make sure that communities, stakeholders are informed of our work and the progress of our work, and try to minimise impact as much as possible as we construct the railway line. Can I have the next slide, please, Leslie? So HS2 in Birmingham. On this slide, don't know how clearly you can see it, but on this slide you can see that the HS2 line comes in from the sort of Wateraughton area into Castle Bromwich. At that point, as it comes into Castle Bromwich and the Birmingham area, it starts off in tunnel. So it's a deep bored tunnel all the way out into Washwood Heath, where we come out of the tunnel over here at Washwood Heath. We come out of the tunnel, and it's a series of cuttings and retaining walls. So the railway line will be at ground level at this point. It then carries on down towards the Nechells area at Duddeston, where the railway line then is on viaduct all the way out into Curzon Street Station. So that's the area that I look after for community engagement, and that's what we're doing in the Birmingham area as a whole. At the moment, our sites are in the process of getting set up. So we have several sites. There's one over at Castle Bromwich Business Park where we're setting up the site. There's one at Washwood Heath where we're setting up for this, and Saltley and Curzon Street. So this means that we're bringing in our compounds, making sure the ground's level, doing some utility works. But again, as I said, this doesn't really affect your area, so I won't go into too much detail about this. But that's what's happening at the moment, and it's due to last until the sort of site setup is due to last until about May 2020 for most, 2021 even, for most of those areas. Next slide, please, Leslie. And then this isn't very clear at all, I don't think, on this, but I have sent the slide deck out, so you can feel free to circulate it to everybody who's attended today. This shows our construction traffic routes, and you can't see it at all really, but our main construction traffic routes to our sites are via the sort of main road. We try to utilise the motorway as much as possible. We come off the motorway onto the A38. We go along the A38 to the Tyburn Road, and then down to the, I can't see what road that is, the A452. But as you can see, your ward is a little bit further up here, so we don't actually bring traffic into your area, although if you are travelling outside of the area, you may see some of our traffic on the roads, but hopefully we shouldn't directly impact you too much with any of our works as a ward. Yep, next slide, please. And this is where I hand over to Paul.
Hi there, thank you, Natish. So I'm just going to talk a bit about the Community Environment Fund. So this is a fund which has been created to add benefit to communities along the route that are demonstrably disrupted by the construction of the phase 1 from HS2 right the way down from London all the way to the West Midlands. Now this kind of focuses on looking at how we can improve the people's quality of life along the route and environment in individual communities. So you are able to apply for these funds. They can be for things like pedestrian and cycle access, projects to increase things like biodiversity. It might be sports or recreational facilities. It could be connected to public open spaces or new community facilities, or things like renovating historic buildings or monuments. So we have quite a good section on our website actually with an interactive map where you can look at some of the projects we've funded. So if you have any ideas, by all means apply. If you could go through to the next slide, please, Leslie. So the Community and Environment Fund, which is otherwise known as CEF, again, this has been created in a similar way to add benefit to some of the communities that we are, sorry, I'm on the business and local economies. So the Business and Local Economy Fund has been created to basically support local economies that are disrupted by the construction of phase 1. So things that communities can apply for is it could be connected to retail and tourist areas or promotional activities for things like increasing footfall to high streets, or it can be for creating and running events and increasing tourism to the area. So again, I really recommend that you go on our website and have a look at some of those examples, and we would really encourage people to apply for both of those funds. If we could go through to the next slides, please, Leslie. So some of the local business opportunities that we've got, as Ian mentioned earlier, during peak construction, we will require 30,000 people to design and build the railway at multiple construction sites along the route. They will at various times need things like places to stay, places to eat, and lots of other services and amenities. So we've got some incredibly large contracts that have been awarded, and with that brings some opportunities for local businesses. If you can go through to the next slide. So this is about the local businesses. So there will be over sort of 400,000 supply chain contract opportunities for UK businesses across the whole of phase 1, and around 2/3 of these will be for SMEs. As an organisation, we want to maximise the benefits of the project, and personally for me, the success of this project a big factor for me personally will be on creating local opportunities for businesses and also employment for people that need it. So we recognise that working with these local businesses brings great benefits to the project, and we really want to work closely with businesses in your area. So again, if you know of any local businesses that would be interested, then I recommend that you visit the website located on the slide and encourage people to sign up to our supply chain. If we can go through to the next slide, please. And these are about some of the different opportunities that we will have. So we've got creative services. So these are things such as like photographers, printers and signage companies. We've got food and catering. It doesn't just include the kitchen setups, but we have mobile caterers on site. We have things like meetings and events, places for the workforce to get their lunch. Accommodation, it could be the modular blocks on site, but also we work closely with a number of bed and breakfasts, hotels and private rentals. Clearly there's going to be a massive requirement for office and construction staff. Employee services cover all things that working on, from health and well-being needs such as gyms and dentists to hairdressers and places for people to spend time with their families. And transport and logistics could be anything from private taxi hire to things like transport management services, such as the people that are employed as banksmen, which control access and egress off our sites. So those are some of the things that some of the opportunities there. So we'd encourage to promote the project wherever possible. And if we can go through to the next slide, Leslie, I think that's where we end the presentation and we hand over to questions.
Okay, that's great. Well, thank you very much for that presentation. I think that's really, really useful, and some questions have come in as well. Just want to first of all add that obviously whilst the HS2 line won't directly go through Erdington, it clearly will have an impact for the local area, and some of the questions relate to that. So we'll touch on that shortly, but obviously it's interesting to hear about the funding that's available as well, because we do have lots of community groups in Erdington and SMEs as well, who I'm sure we would very much like to see be able to access that funding and support that's available. So just on the questions that came in, so we had one from someone who asked whether HS2 will use the existing tracks north of New York and not new tracks. So if we could have clarification on that point, please. And then someone's asked if the HS2 line will impact on future plans for rail stations at Castle Bromwich and Castle Vale. If anyone is able to answer those, please.
So in terms of the integration with other rail networks, so I spent actually the last 4 years working on phase 2B, so that's the section that goes north from Birmingham, and the idea and the aspiration is that our trains would be what we call cross-compatible and would go onto the conventional network where we have the electrified overhead lines, and then we will have services that will run north of Leeds using existing tracks and then link into Scotland. So yeah, that's correct. In terms of how it would impact plans, so the idea about HS2 is that as Ian said, there hasn't been any significant investment of new rail infrastructure north of London for what would be since Victorian times, since one of the very first stations and one of the world's oldest piece of railway architecture, the Birmingham station itself, was built. So a very, very long time ago. But the idea of HS2 is that we free up capacity. It's not just about speed and getting to London 20 minutes quicker. That's a bit of a myth there. What it's about is basically freeing up those long distance journeys, which is what we call the intercity journeys. We take and absorb all of those long distance journeys, get them onto HS2, and what that does is that releases capacity on your regional and conventional local railways. So it wouldn't, I would say, limit any kind of investment, but what it does is it's a catalyst for creating better transport networks. And with that increased capacity, what you'll notice on a lot of regional lines is that because you're taking those long distance journeys off of what we'd almost call local railway lines, the freed up capacity gives the network much more freedom to be able to have more frequent services. So in most places you'll find that by having HS2 freeing up that capacity, it gives the ability for local networks to thrive, and you'll find that you have much more better services. With that particular rail station, I'm not that much of a rail buffer, I'd be able to comment on that one, but I can certainly take that away and find out. You just drop me a note after the meeting. But that's the idea about HS2 anyway, frees up capacity and promotes growth.
Okay, no, that's great. And obviously we certainly would not want HS2 to impact on improving local rail networks. So just want to bring Robert or Bob want to comment at this point?
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions I can, and just picking up on that one, it's certainly my understanding previously that the idea was HS2 would free up the station capacity in New Street to allow then those lines to be able to come in from a Castle Bromwich and a Thorpe Parkway station. So that hopefully should be helpful for that. There's one more question we've had in the chat which has been sent in privately, so I can't publish it, but it's just asking around road traffic along the Chester Road, and then obviously the Tyburn Road, the A38, which is the other road you highlighted. Are you able just to give some assurances about if those roads are being used and how the traffic will be managed along them.
You want me to take this one, Paul?
Yeah, sure. Natish, yeah.
So as part of the planning for HS2, there was an environmental statement that was published about the traffic routes and the traffic impacts for each area. So there was an assessment that was undertaken looking at how they would impact each area, and as part of our planning, BBV as the main works contractor, we have stuck to those routes that were identified in the environmental statement, along with the sort of assessments that were undertaken at that point. They put limits on the numbers of vehicles we could bring along each of the roads at any one time. So we've had to submit what's called Schedule 17 planning applications to Birmingham City Council, and those planning applications are then assessed, and we have to get approval for each of the routes from the planning department. So we are working within limits that have been assessed by technical and environmental experts, looking at the traffic counts in your area and how it will impact. So we have to stick to set limits, so we can't put as whatever volume of lorry movements on the road as we'd like, is how we're going to manage it. Is there anything you'd like to add to that, Paul or Ian?
No, I think you've covered that for me, Natish.
Yeah, me too.
And so, Gareth, if I can just do a follow-up, but so just to confirm then, those limits that are sort of set against from the earlier inquiries and planning applications, that then will provide some security that the routes for the lorries to go won't be moved north and then start going past where local schools are and the high street are.
Yeah, so we have to stick to those. So if we want to change any routes at all, we need to then do a separate environmental assessment to make sure that it's safe to do it, and then it would have to go through a whole planning process with the local authority as well. So those are our routes. Those are what we're planning to stick to, and if anything changed for any reason, then you would be informed of that. But at this time, this is what we're sticking to.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you very much for that. And I think probably as the planning side has been mentioned, I should mention that both myself and Councillor Beecham are members of the planning committee, and obviously won't be expressing any opinions in relation to HS2 at this time, so we can take part in the process. So I can't see any other questions at the moment. So I'm mindful we are halfway through the meeting. So I think at this point we'll move on. So thank you very much for joining this evening. So if we do get any further questions throughout the course of the meeting, we will let you know and obviously seek answers for those. But thank you very much for the update on that. It's much appreciated. So moving back, as it were, to discuss the situation with COVID, I believe we've got Hamira, is it, who's joining us? So I can see you online, so we've got you now. So are you able to provide an update as to what's happening with the pandemic, but specifically relating to Erdington and Perry Common wards, please?
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for your patience. I was there, but I wasn't. But I'm here now. So yeah, just as Councillor just kind of explained, I'm here to give a COVID-19 update. My name's Hamira Sultan, public health consultant within Justin Varney's team. I'm sure most people are aware of Justin and being our DPH and all the updates that he gives. He couldn't be here tonight, so I'm taking his place just for a few moments. So just in terms of kind of where we're at in terms of COVID right now, it's really good news that our rates are continuing to fall. So if you were to look back kind of week previously, our rate was at 225 per 100,000 in the Birmingham local authority. Kind of if we look at the most recent data now, that figure has dropped down to 183 per 100,000. So, and it's been dropping continuously over the last 2 weeks, which again is really positive news. The rate was dropping at a faster rate than it is at the moment. So we are keeping a close eye on that. If we also look at how Birmingham compares across the rest of the country, when we look at the 7-day case rate, that we're now the 35 highest in England when we compare ourselves with other local authorities. When I did this ward forum recently, about a week or so ago, we were something like the 26th. So definitely we're going in the right direction. Again, one of the main things that we've been seeing is that, apologies, my 3-year-old son has found me in the office, so hopefully he's not being too distracting. The spread appears to be mainly happening through social interactions. So this is down to households mixing when they shouldn't be, and that's the main thing that we're seeing at the moment, which is what we think is causing our COVID-19 rates. We look across the whole of the West Midlands. Everywhere across our region is seeing a decrease in COVID rates. Others are showing faster rates of decrease, such as, for instance, Dudley or Worcestershire or Shropshire. As I said before, our rate, the rate at which the rate is going down is slowing down slightly. If we also, just scrolling down to my notes, just bear with me. So just in terms of the 2 wards that we have here, Erdington and Perry Common, if we take Erdington first, this actually, when you look at the most recent data, the Erdington ward ranks at the 24th out of the 69 wards we have in the city with a number of COVID cases. So where the first ward is the highest number of cases and the 69th the lowest. And also in terms of the Perry Common ward, this actually ranks 67th out of 69 wards around all of Birmingham. So again, just to repeat, what first is the highest ranking and 69th is the lowest. So Perry Common is what we're seeing, one of the fewest cases that we're seeing across the city. Just bear with me. Sorry, everyone. I'm going to close the door.
No, that's okay. That's not a problem. We appreciate it can be challenging sometimes
that's okay.
in terms of childcare and online meetings. So that's not a problem.
It's been an interesting 9 months, councillor. Yeah, and I just wanted to give, I guess, everybody here on the call just a bit of generic kind of advice and just updates as to where we're at in terms of the country at the moment as well. So I'll pop these all into the chat if that's helpful, just so that people have got a record of where this information is coming from. So firstly, I'm sure people are following in the media at the moment as well that there is a vaccine now approved for use in the UK, and that's now started to being rolled out. We are getting a lot of questions about when am I going to get vaccinated? When is my workforce group going to get vaccinated? And one of the first message to say is actually it's the NHS that is managing the whole process in terms of vaccination and who gets what. As a local authority, we're not really involved in that. But what I will share is a link to something called the JCVI. So that's the Joint Committee for Vaccinations and Immunisations. They're the experts in terms of anything vaccination related. And they've actually published guidelines on who they think should be who should be vaccinated as a priority. And generally what we're aiming for is to minimise the risk of mortality. So minimising the risk of people dying. So, the people that are going to get vaccinated first are those that are most at risk of COVID and most at risk of dying from COVID. So that's our elderly with comorbidities, and that's our top group in terms of the population. In terms of workforce, it's those people that are working with the most high risk individuals in terms of who would suffer the consequences of COVID-19. So that's our NHS workforce, our social care workforce. So after I finish talking, I'll pop all the stuff into the chat as a link if people want to kind of look at that in a bit more detail. That's one of the first things just to make you aware of. And the second thing is we are, we're really keen on promoting our COVID-19 community champions. So I'm not sure if people at this ward forum have heard of this initiative by Birmingham City Council, but we've now got over 500 people signed up to this, and essentially we're asking people in the community, who have got a role in terms of connecting other people, who are quite visible in their community or who feel confident talking to others that they live, very, very close to, about pushing out all the right messages around COVID, how to keep safe, the kind of things to avoid, So, you know, messages about kind of hands, face and space. So the importance of keeping your hands clean. Hand washing is still really important. Wearing a face covering when you're supposed to. So in an enclosed space where you're with people that you wouldn't normally be with. So public transport or in a shop. And of course, keeping your distance. You know, keeping a 2-meter distance from people that you don't normally live with and you normally spend time with, whether it's at school or at work. That's all really important. So our COVID-19 community champions will be kind of keep pushing these messages. Also reminding people about, you know, what you can and can't do at the moment. I'm very conscious, as is the whole public health team in Birmingham City Council, of how confusing it's gotten really with COVID-19. You know, before lockdown we were in tier 2, then we had the national lockdown part 2, came out of lockdown last week and we're now in tier 3. Which is quite different to tier 2. So some of the things really that have really changed it from that perspective is, you know, there's absolutely no household mixing, and that was the case during the national lockdown. This is continuing into tier 3 as well. Unless you're in a support bubble with another household, then there's absolutely no household mixing. Also in tier 3 as well. Things like cafes, restaurants, pubs are not open as well. And if you remember back to when I first started my update, when you look at the kind of reasons why we're getting COVID in our population, it's mainly through social interactions. So those spaces and places where, you know, it's possible for people that don't normally spend time together to be together, and especially indoors. And that's what we're avoiding in tier 3. And, you know, that we think is contributing a lot to our case rate coming down. Another thing to also make you aware of in tier 3 is that, you know, you can meet other people that you don't live with in a very few certain circumstances, and the rule of 6 still applies. So that's where you can meet 6 individuals outside of your household. And you can meet in a group of 6. Sorry, so you plus 5 others potentially from 5 different households. Still, the recommendation, the guidelines is that you keep your distance. But one of the few places that you can actually do this is in our parks and public spaces. So, you know, Birmingham as a city, we have 591 parks and open spaces. And, you know, in terms of mental health and well-being, we'd really encourage people to go out and make use of those. And then the only other thing to kind of make you aware of as well is, and again, I'm sure most people have been following this in the media, is around some of the changes to the rules during the Christmas time. So between the 23rd and the 27th of December, the government are allowing 3 households. That's a maximum of 3 households to form one bubble, to allow people to meet and socialise during the festive period. You know, it's probably fair to say from a public health perspective, we're quite concerned about the impact that this is going to have on our case rate. But, you know, this is the policy. And you know, we're trying to prepare ourselves as best as possible for dealing with the impact of that at the moment. But just to reiterate, so that there's no confusion, it is only 3 households forming one bubble over that entire period. So it wouldn't be, for instance, a case on the 23rd you can meet 2 other households, then on the 24th you meet another 2 different households, and the idea is almost that those 3 households become almost one for that period of time. And of course, you don't have to do it. You don't have to join a bubble with anybody else over Christmas, but just to kind of help people understand kind of, you know, what you can and can't do. So I'm conscious that I've been talking for a little while, but if anybody wants to ask any questions, I'm very happy to answer them, Councillor, if that would be helpful.
Yeah, sure, and thank you for that, Amira. It's appreciated. I think someone's got their mic on, so I'm hearing feedback. There we go, it's better. So thank you for that. So obviously appreciate the update on that. We do have one question which we'll come to shortly. So I just have a couple of questions. Obviously, in terms of, we're in tier 3 at the moment. Previously we're in tier 2. You say the case rate is dropping. From a local perspective, how long do you think it's likely to be with the way the case rate's falling that will remain in tier 3, given the significant impact that has had, not only on terms of people's well-being and particularly mental health, but also in terms of businesses, especially in hospitality, who are being crippled at the moment as a result of the restrictions and being basically unable to trade. And even then in tier 2, that's still going to be very difficult for them. So but do we have an indication possibly from the local health data as to how long that's going to continue?
So at the moment, it's positive news in terms of how, as I said, how the case rate is falling. I think there is some concern that it's going to jump up again as soon as we hit the Christmas holidays. So there is a balance definitely in terms of, and also the fact that there's going to be Christmas, but that there's going to be Christmas bubbling going on as well. And we know that we know that some people are not going to, stick to the rules of 3 households. At the moment, there's no indication that we're moving out of tier 3. And we've discussed it as a senior team in public health as well, and our feeling is most likely we will remain in tier 3 at the next review. That there's nothing coming forward from anybody that's suggesting that's going to change. Completely hear what you're saying, Councillor, about the impact that's going to continue having on people in terms of their lives and how they're living, how they're managing. But what we're hoping is that if we do stay in tier 3, it'll give us a bit of a buffer kind of to get through Christmas and to manage and counteract some of the socialising and stuff that will happen, which will bring our case rate up again. We're pretty sure about that. So yes, at the moment there's no change that we're expecting. But of course, as soon as that changes, we'll be communicating that as soon as we can.
Okay, no, that's fine. And then a couple of quick questions in terms of, obviously, what is public health locally in Birmingham doing to support those, particularly with their poor mental health at the moment as a result of the challenges? Particularly, I know you touched on Christmas. Christmas is often a time that people will spend together with family, and yes, I appreciate there are concerns about allowing them to mix over Christmas, but ideally spending Christmas alone is not a pleasant experience outside of a pandemic anyway. So the idea of potentially doing that for many people, if they weren't allowed to meet families. So what's been done locally to try and help that? I know we've got Afsal on the call, who I'll bring in shortly to touch about some of the what's going on in Erdington. So, but what's been done regarding that? And one of the questions put forward is around supermarkets not doing enough to prevent overcrowding and obviously face mask enforcement, which I appreciate is a touchy issue depending on your view on the situation. So, but what's the council doing to support in terms of mental health and ensure compliance in supermarkets and retail?
So in terms of mental health, so the Public Health Birmingham, we've actually invested quite a lot of time in terms of resources to support those with mental health issues. So we've tried to kind of link into the five ways to well-being. So connected with individuals in terms of kind of keeping active. So, again, just to reiterate, all our parks and green spaces are open, and, they haven't closed during the pandemic at all. And that's one of, I'm looking at Afsal, he can't see me, I'm looking at him, but, we are actually working together on a green spaces programme. And I would encourage anybody as much as possible to get out into the green spaces. The evidence base is absolutely clear in terms of the impact that it has on mental health, and you can meet people outdoors in public spaces as well, which is really important. So that's absolutely permissible as part of tier 3. We've got a whole kind of be healthy kind of work area that we've kind of part commissioned and part developed ourselves. So once I get off this off talking, I'll make sure that all those links are shared on this ward forum chat, so people can go back and kind of revisit those. We're also know in schools as well, the department, because also for young people, mental well-being, not being able to socialise, and it's all part of being a young person, connecting with your peers and so forth, has been really difficult. Even the whole school structure and the way the school day runs now is very different to how it would have been before the pandemic. So the DfE has actually made available some mental health support and funding in terms of teachers being able to better support their young people with mental health issues. So again, we can share information on that as well. And in terms of the question about enforcement, we have actually started to employ COVID marshals as well in the city. So these are individuals, so they're not enforcers in the sense that the police are or environmental health is, but we are trying to put out COVID marshals in those areas where we think there are issues around compliance. But what I can do is, if people have specific concerns about specific areas, if they can be shared with me, I can make sure that they get to the right people who actually manage our COVID-19 marshals to see if there can be an increased presence in certain areas. In terms of businesses, my view, my professional view on face masks is that, you know, they're really important in terms of preventing the spread of COVID. So absolutely would encourage everybody, as much as possible, as long as they don't have a health issue which prevents them from using a face mask, to adhere to those guidelines. If people are concerned about supermarkets concerned about supermarkets allowing overcrowding, we can actually report that through a whistleblowing line as well. And again, once I come off kind of talking, I'll put all this information into the chat for people so they actually know where to go to raise it. And environmental health have been superb in the council at kind of following up on these issues. Even before we went into tier 3, and when, you know, cafes were open, pubs were open, restaurants were open, and they've actually intervened on quite a significant number of cases now in terms of and actually got places closed down because they're not following COVID-19 guidelines. So absolutely, if you do report it, absolutely, it will be looked at. And this is where the whole community is so important, that we need people to be vigilant, and we need people to feel confident and to be able to challenge, and and there is support to do that.
Okay, thanks for that, Hamira. I think certainly one place I know where it has been raised is the Lidl on the junction of Tyburn Road and Kingsby Road. I know there's been a few concerns raised in relation to that, and that has been reported through the whistleblowing. But I understand from those residents who've raised those concerns that that hasn't been addressed. So it would be grateful if you could feed that back and perhaps look at what the council's done to ensure that. Appreciate it's a difficult challenge because people obviously want to access food, etc. But clearly we have to make sure it's done in a safe way, especially if we're to get the case rate down. So I'm not sure if Robert or Bob have any questions, but I just want to bring in Afzal at this point. So obviously thank Afzal. For those who are watching, Afzal from Witton Lodge Community Association is chairing the local task force on COVID-19, which is a conglomeration of various community groups who are helping deliver support locally within the Erdington constituency. So Afzal, do you just want to talk briefly about some of the work that you've been doing?
Yes, well, good evening, everyone, and thank you very much, Councillor Moore. Well, that was a really good introduction to the work of the COVID-19 task force. I suppose just to say that the task force and the members have been meeting since very early on in the pandemic, and the focus was really to make sure that there was good communication between groups and organisations, and that we could come together and collaborate and cooperate in responding to the issues that residents were facing, spotting where the gaps were and then doing something about it. And really it's had that action focus ever since. It's a very proactive group. We probably have in the order of up to about 40 different members, but on a weekly basis there's a good dozen to 20 people who attend those meetings. There is an emergency asset register that has been developed, which lists all of the services and organisations who are providing support in the constituency, but also down to ward level. So it will include information on services and support in Erdington as well as Perry Common wards. And there are about half a dozen work streams which are actively building on good work that's there and also responding to the gaps. Just to give you an example of one of the gaps, clearly the way that we're meeting today is not how we were meeting 9 months ago, a year ago, in terms of the face-to-face that we were having. So we identified the issue of digital literacy and access to equipment. So a number of colleagues, a number of organisations in certainly Perry Common and wider are providing digital training, but also access to equipment. So there's a lending library, for example, that we have available, which we can make available through groups or to individuals to give them skills to use the equipment, but also connect with each other. And it goes back very much to the point that you were making about there's a physical element to this pandemic, but there's a mental health issue, and making sure that people can connect is really important. I know Hamira has also already talked about the role of parks and open spaces, and that is something again that we work very closely with Hamira and other colleagues in doing that. if there's just two other things I'd like to mention is that obviously there's a health issue and at the moment in the pandemic. There's also one which is related to the economy, and one of the other things that we did very early on is to bring together a number of stakeholders from Erdington but wider to also to have a look at what was going to be the fallout from the pandemic in terms of jobs and skills in the economy. Really pleased to say that that wider North Birmingham Economic Recovery Task Force has been meeting and has again agreed a number of actions. It includes, interestingly, HS2, includes the Commonwealth Games, JLR and IM Properties. So we're not only just focusing on where the deficits are, and there are going to be issues about people needing support with, you know, advice and skills training. Also, we're focusing on where the opportunities are now and in the future, and making sure that the residents are ready to take those opportunities. One of the ways that those partners have committed to the initiative is to dedicate some resource, that's either direct time or resources. So we're going to have someone focused looking at the economy in North Birmingham, and we're just going through the recruitment process for that. One very specific element of the economic work is linked to the potential transformation of the former pool site on Mason Road. I know I can see Councillor Alden, who's been very closely involved in supporting us with that. That is obviously tied in with the Future High Streets Fund application. I keep looking at Councillor Alden to kind of say, oh, you know, we've got the funds, but he hasn't said it, so I'm not sure that that's the case. However, that has the potential to transform the high streets, and we feel that the proposals that we have for the former pool site could be a catalyst for that transformation. And just very briefly, the focus on that is on enterprise. Really, whether you're a budding entrepreneur or have some ideas and want to be you know, self-employed, we want to be able to provide space for you to the other end where you might be an established business. And again, link it to the earlier presentation, if you've been affected by HS2 and looking to relocate, for example, where we're saying, you know, Erdington could be, and this facility could be a great place for an existing business to relocate to. The two strands of work which have been progressing well, one has been on the design side. So we're obviously keen and sympathetic to the heritage of the building, and we want to maintain that. And at the same time, for it to be contemporary and modern and to be functional. The other strand, as you'll appreciate, is on the viability of that. So a business plan to make sure that, given some of the uncertainties in the economy, that we're able to make this stack up. There has been community consultation. Really pleased to say, I think at the last count, we had 78 local residents who responded to that online survey, expressing support for that general concept, and there'll be more opportunities to feed into that. And the final thing to say is, obviously, returning back to the theme of community, we're coming up to Christmas again in Erdington, Perry Common and surrounding areas. There is a campaign to ensure that we can get together and we can celebrate, albeit safely. And there are a number of partners who've got some really creative and imaginative ways of promoting those activities. I'm really happy to, if you haven't had those, I know Councillor Alden has received those, but send that information links through to Leslie to distribute. So, for example, tomorrow, over the next 3 days, there's a world record attempt, would you believe it, in Perry Common for the largest holly Christmas wreath. I mean, that, you know, colleagues, no, in fact, today they've started. I've been working remotely, so I'm in tomorrow, and so people are welcome to come and participate in that. And also thinking about what will happen over the Christmas period. And you made the point rightly that there are people who will be isolated and lonely, and we're going to really have some practical ways of making sure that we're able to keep in touch and connect people over that Christmas period as well. I'm happy to take questions. Hopefully that's given you enough of a flavour and feel for the kind of things that are going on.
No, that's great, Afsal. Thank you very much for that, and obviously thank you for the work that you do on behalf of Witton Lodge and the task force as well. And particularly thank you also to all those community groups who've done a tremendous role in the last 9 months now, supporting people during this pandemic. There's far too many to mention, but particularly obviously the volunteers, the litter busters, etc., who've done a fantastic job.
Absolutely.
And to everyone who's helped out. So Robert, do you have any questions at this point?
Yeah, thank you. I do. I also just a comment, just obviously a couple of people touched on education and the impact on kids there, and we've been very concerned about making sure that children aren't left behind during this pandemic. So we've been working cross-party with the city leadership, lobbying a number of the suppliers the council uses and computer firms to try and get more access to computers in the city for school kids. So those kids who do end up having to go into isolation in bubbles are able to still access education, because I've worried through a lot of this that we might find in a few years' time that actually the impact on people's education prospects is in a way greater than the health impact. So it's good that work's going on, as well as the other work that AFSEL's also touched on around trying to help secure improvements and opportunities locally. I just wondered if Hamira could almost clarify. So a couple of things that get raised with us a lot, and it'd be great if you could just talk a bit about it. Is one around the Christmas rules. Sorry, I'm reading my notes there. Christmas rules, where we get asked, does a person who's in your support bubble, so if someone's got a support bubble, does that count as one of the three, or does it not? And then the other question is around what sport and exercise is allowed now we're out of lockdown and into tier 3. So if people play in a sports team, are they allowed to restart, that kind of thing?
Hi, Councillor Alden. So yes, in terms of the support bubble question, so if people are in a support bubble, that will just count as one household. So they are then able to then form a bubble with 2 other households. That's absolutely fine. In terms of kind of what you can do in tier 3, so any kind of indoor group activity is not allowed during tier 3. So kind of, indoor exercise classes and so forth. However, outdoors is a much more positive picture. So kind of grassroots football is being allowed. You can go out for a walk as a group of 6 if you wanted to, using your local park or your local open space. Go in, and there's no restriction on how often you go outside in tier 3. I don't know if people can remember as far back as March when we first went into lockdown. You were allowed to go out once and for no more than an hour or something along. I seem to recall. So there's no limit on how much time you can spend outdoors in terms of kind of tier 3. Some people might have also kind of in their local parks have things like Tai Chi going on, swing fit, or outdoor yoga as provided through active parks. Those activities are still allowed to take place as well. So so the general rule is outdoors is okay, but the number of 30 is a maximum for outdoors as well. And anywhere running, kind of wanting to do outdoor activities for exercise, they'd need a COVID-19 risk assessment that we'd sign off as a council as well. So depending on which department it falls under. So for instance, outdoor Tai Chi would require sign off from the Parks Department, just to make sure that we're assured that you've got the right procedures in place to try and limit the spread of COVID-19. I hope that helps to clarify a little bit.
It does. Thank you very much.
Okay, right. Okay, well, thank you very much for that. So at the moment we do have one question, but it's not COVID related, but it's to do with the high street. So I think that's going to nicely segue us into our next agenda item, I think. So, but at this point, I'd just like to thank Amira for coming along and appreciate the update that you've provided. I think you're having some technical issues in sharing the links you mentioned, but we'll make sure we'll get those out to people so they can access the information, because clearly I'm sure that a lot of people want to have an opportunity to digest that outside of the meeting.
I've just pinged that over into an email to John, so yeah.
And I'm just going to put them onto the chat now.
Brilliant. Okay.
Excellent, that's great. So that's all picked up then. So I believe just trying to, oh, thank you, Amira. Just trying to, yes, so just looking at the agenda. So the next one was the High Street update. And I see we've had a question regarding plans to regenerate the village green. As far as I'm aware at the moment, I'm not sure, unless anything's come in today, that we haven't had any decision on the Future High Streets Fund at the moment, unfortunately. So I'm just looking at Robert to confirm that's the case or not. So, but we're still obviously waiting for a decision on that. And I'm pretty sure that as part of the public realm plans for that the village green was included, which I'm hoping is the case. But obviously, if you know, unfortunately, if the bid is unsuccessful, we'll still look at ways we can try and improve the village green, as it's a key focal point in the high street and definitely needs some TLC on that. Now, we had hoped for the high street update for an update to be provided by Terry Guest, who's the town centre manager, but unfortunately for technical reasons Terry's not able to join, but hopefully he's watching. But he's sent through a very short report, which I'm going to read out now for everyone, which hopefully will bring everyone up to date. So Terry said, in very trying circumstances, the high street area is showing great resilience. On the plus side, we have a much lower than average of empty shop units, running at about 6% against a national average of 11%. On the minus side, 2 of our larger stores, New Look has closed down and Peacocks, although still open and trading, are in administration. This obviously reduces choice on the high street. We are working with landlords and others to fill these empty spaces. Erdington has always thrived with the small independent retail businesses that make up the most of the town centre, and this year is no exception, with a huge choice of household goods, food and drink and medicines supplying locals right through the lockdowns. Despite national names deserting all our town centres, Erdington still supplies the needs of local shoppers. Its reputation as a bargain centre has helped maintain footfall and customer loyalty in these difficult times. Normally this time of year we would be having a number of live events in the town centre, including the much missed Santa's Free Grotto. Our town centre promotion this year has been restricted to social media. This has also helped to get the message across: shop local, shop Erdington, and there is hope that we can put these events on again in 2021. The barriers installed by the council at the start of the first lockdown period have proven divisive in some areas, particularly at the Six Ways end of the high street. Although the town centre has 6 car parks, there is a demand for street parking also. The barriers are there to increase pavement space and encourage social distancing. The council are currently reviewing this situation. Along with the councillors, we are working with the police for an increased police presence in the town centre. Police presence has increased recently due to more work to persuade shoppers to wear masks. Our aim ultimately is to return to daily police patrols with our own bid warden in support. In October 2021, we'll be asking the town centre business to vote to continue the bid for a further 5 years. Between now and then, we'll be working with them to form a plan to decide what kind of town centre they want for the future. The government application for the future high street funds will be most welcome, since part of the town centre are in need of modernisation. We need to face future challenges in what may well be a different high street in the years to come. So just back. So that's the update that Terry has provided. So I'm just looking through. I can't see any further questions. Robert, is there anything you want to add on the high street at this point, or?
Yeah, I think it's just worth recording our thanks for all the work that Terry does on the high street. In many ways, it's a thankless task, having to be the person that goes down there and sometimes is saying the things to businesses they might not like to hear in current times, but is also trying to do obviously all he can to help regenerate the high street, and he's been very supportive of all the work we've been trying to do to bring in funding to the high street. So that's all very welcome. And really just a plea to everyone just to make sure you do try and use the high street. I'm sure there are shops that everyone uses that are on the high street, so please make sure you support them, because we want to make sure that the high street survives this current economic crisis and gets through it and is able to be stronger on the other side, particularly when hopefully we'll have some significant investment coming in from the Future High Streets Fund to really help modernise and transform the high street.
No, that's great. Thank you for that, Robert. So moving on with the agenda, we do have next is the Witton Lodge update from Afsal. Is there anything? I know you've obviously touched a bit about the work of Witton Lodge. Is there anything else you'd like to add at this point?
I don't think so, Councillor Moore, unless there are any specific questions, which I'm happy to take.
No, that's fine. Thank you, Afsal. I can't see it.
Gareth,
yep. Could
I just come in for a second on that? I think as well, I don't think we should underestimate how great it is that Witton Lodge have been willing to come on board with the Erdington Leisure Centre, the old Erdington Baths, and helping really transform that. It is clear if Witton Lodge hadn't been here to be able to actually put a really good offer on the table in terms of a local business and skills hub to help support entrepreneurship in our area, that instead of having a historic building saved and put to good use, that would have been demolished. The council would have flogged it and demolished it. It is very clear. And so from a local perspective, it is just massive that Witton Lodge have been willing to put that faith and trust in Erdington and actually help preserve one of our key heritage assets, which sadly in the past has not always happened. So that is just something really good that I think we should really recognise.
No, but very much so, and I very much echo those sentiments. So thank you for that, Robin. We're obviously very grateful for Witton Lodge stepping in to help, given the significance and the importance of the old swimming bath site within Erdington and the High Street as well. So just having a look through, and I can't see any other questions from the member of public unless they've got lost in the links, which I don't think they have. So on that basis, we're at the end of the meeting now. So I just want to thank everyone for tuning in this evening to watch. I hope you found this the information useful, and we'll certainly be looking to see if we can do some more of these online meetings moving forward, so long as the restrictions take place. But hopefully we'll be able to meet in person soon. So I hope everyone keeps safe, and take this opportunity to wish you all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Thank you.
Merry Christmas, everybody.